Yes, unfortunately, yet another piece of junk black box export radio. Hopefully one of these days I get to a point where I never have to touch another one of these things. Because the more I see him, the more I hate him. Just, So in any case, what the hell is this? This is I know it's a VHP. What the hell is it? Galaxy DX-98VHP. Now the customer, and I'm not sure. I really need to talk to him again. He said he bought this radio brand new, untouched, didn't have any modifications. Gave it to somebody local that apparently, well, and actually apparently it used to work on radios until he blew up several people's radios, and I guess he's no longer working on radios. So he wanted to send this to me to have it checked out to see what was done to it and undo any modifications. He just wants a good working radio. So that's what we're going to do here. And actually, I forgot he actually had said, and it didn't dawn on me until now, I've already started some repairs, that he wanted me to do a video to show anything that I see. So I've only done actually one repair so far, and that's not, I can show the other stuff, which actually there's not a lot really that was done to this. I'm, usually expecting to see lots of, well, actually, there are power modifications, but, all the limiters cut and clipped and just all kinds of, hocus-pocus, smoke-in-your-face watt meter crap. Yeah, it's got some of that, but I was kind of expecting to see worse from what he was saying about this guy. So, open it up, yeah, I can see some modifications. And then I also noticed that, and it didn't dawn on me when I first got the radio on the bench, the coax, the connector on the end of that coax cable that sticks out the back, because this actually doesn't have a jack on the back, it actually has a short coax cable with a female connector on the end. And it didn't dawn on me, like I say, until I actually had had it on the bench, tore it apart, and I'm looking at it, and then I saw there's a broken screw right here. So, this cover plate has 4 screws that hold it down, or a shield box there. And a screw's broken off. Crap, what the hell would somebody be in the amplifier of a brand new radio for? Maybe they're adjusting the bias, don't know, so you take the cover off. Then I noticed, that's when the light bulb went off. I look at the end of that connector, well actually not that connector, reach over here and grab it, this connector. Actually what I had was get it screwed back together. That's what I was looking at. Big long thing. I'm like, what the hell? I was like, wait a minute, there's an adapter in there. I was like, astatic. I was like, why is there an astatic end? And yeah, somebody stuck a male connector on the end of the cable for some reason. And then I also noticed that I could rotate the plug on the cable freely. It was just, yeah, I mean, you could tell the wires, at least the center conductor, felt like something was still attached, but yeah, it just spun. And yeah, so let me get the nut back. So I unscrew the nut. Yeah, they soldered the wires to it just broke off. So I don't know how in the hell how they did this installation. Whoever did, and I don't know if this other guy did this or not. Well, it had to be. If the radio was bought new, anything that's been done to this had to be done by that guy. My question there would be, why would you be doing a repair on a coax cable if it's a brand new radio? So I don't know, man. Maybe this thing has been to more than one person. I don't know. It's not my radio. I didn't buy it new, so I have no clue. But so if you install connectors on coax cables, for starters, this is not the proper way to install it. This is not the proper end for this cable for starters. This is a double shielded cable, Teflon inner and outer jacket. Yeah, it's actually a very high quality cable they use on these things. But yeah, this is not how you do it. You don't cut the cable off, strip the end off, solder it, and then slide this end up and solder the braid to this, and then screw the end on. That's not how you install these, people. You push this up, fold the braid back over it, screw it in, and then solder down through the holes to the braid. So the braid is soldered to this body, not to this. Yeah, that's wrong. And that's why, yeah, like I say, I could spin it so the center conductor's still on, but yeah, that was it. So the braid wasn't connected anymore. So yeah, that's big fail there. So it has a brand new, actually even better quality coax cable in there. That is a different cable. It's actually a tiny bit thicker in diameter and has a little bit better center conductor as well. But that's on with a good high quality, not some, whatever the hell I said that was, yeah, an astatic plug body on the end. That actually has an Amphenol. Actually there's, I just stuck a new end on it. So has a good, very good coax cable and an Amphenol connector. The other thing was, yeah, it was the solder, how it was soldered down to the board. Woo! Somebody needs to learn how to use a soldering iron, because now it's in correctly. Good, nice, clean solder joints. The other thing was, this 0.1 microfarad ceramic chip capacitor here was actually broken. So I guess when they were soldering, like I said, I don't know why would somebody be soldering on a coax cable on a brand new radio. It makes no sense, but they'd soldered the center conductor and the grounds, and they broke that ceramic chip capacitor. So actually that's why this box of chip capacitors is out. So that's got a new one in there. Other than that, everything in the amplifier looks fine. Can't say I see anything else that's been done to it. Now, I'll check the bias on it when I do the alignment on this. The radio itself, you know, from the top side, doesn't really look too bad. You know, I can, actually, yeah, that might be part of his hodgepodgery back there. There is a diode there. That should be a resistor. But yeah, I see Schottky diodes. You know, you can see the blue diodes here, and then for the noise blanker. Yeah, I used to do the 2SC2999 and, you know, Schottky diode mod. Honestly, I stopped doing them. It's a waste of money. It's one of those situations where the juice ain't worth the squeezing. Does it have any benefit? Yeah, probably a little bit. Is it, like I say, is the juice worth the squeezing? No. Because honestly, it's not a noticeable difference. So I just stopped doing them. I'm not going to go charging the customer for a bunch of mods that aren't needed. So yeah, I don't do those. Now, do I need to take those out? No, they're perfectly fine. I'll check the soldering on them. But yeah, it's not going to hurt anything. But it's not like you're going to take a crappy receiver and turn it into a stellar performer by doing the receive mod. I think it's, like I said, there's really not much on the top side. I do need to check, because I'm not 100%, I try not to remember anything about RCI radios. Yeah, this is a Galaxy, but as you can clearly see there, it says Ranger. So it's an RCI radio. I try to forget everything about these, because like I said, I really don't like these junk radios. But yeah, there's a bunch of doubled up diodes. There's some doubled up diodes there, 2 in series. There's 2 in series there. There's another place in here, I think, where I saw 2 diodes in series together, where, you know, the board's clearly marked for one. Now, if you see stuff like that, don't immediately think, that somebody did a modification. That's actually fairly common for manufacturers to do that. So I need to pull out the schematic, look at that, and see, that might just be factory. A lot of times they'll do factory modifications like that, where over time they realize that their crappy radio was really crappy, and they've, you know, come up with, you know, bulletins and, you know, upgrades for it. And a lot of times it'll be something like that. You'll see like 2 diodes. Easiest way to tell if the radio hasn't been highly screwdrivered, and, well, not just screwdrivered, but actually hasn't had a lot of work done on it over the years, and the bottom of the, you know, the solder side of the board still is fairly original. It's fairly easy to tell what's been done to a radio. Just look at the solder job. Even when I hand solder, you can take the best solderers on the planet. When if you take a brand new radio and you go doing some work to it, your soldering is going to stick out, you know, compared to all of the other solder joints on the board, because this board was, wave soldered in a machine when it was assembled. So your hand soldering is going to look different. So that's the easiest way a lot of times to tell. If you see stuff like that, doubled up diodes, just flip the board over. Does it look like the original wave soldering? If it does, you know, if it looks like the leads were then sanded off, they weren't cut off with a wire cutter, yeah, it's original. So, but like I said, that diode, yeah, I'm pretty sure that diode's not supposed to be there. That should be a resistor. And no, actually those would be missing, because this doesn't, I don't think this has. Does this have a modulation meter? No, this does not have a modulation meter function. No. Yeah, some radios do. That's why you'll often see a lot of empty holes. There's parts that are missing. Well, they're missing because the radio doesn't have options that need them. So let's take a look at the solder side. And there's some obvious work here. Now, one thing I was, like I say, surprised to see was, first thing I do is usually take the cover off this side. First thing I notice, yes, it's got the stupid resistor and diode bodged against across the regulator there, so it is definitely a splatter box. I say this time and again and again and again. I'm getting tired of hearing my own voice. You do this modification, all of your power is not on channel. You sound like, you can take a radio that sounds to start with and make it really sound like crap. You do these modifications, if you have to remember, this is not an FCC authorized radio that had to meet stringent, specifications. They can make these radios any way they want. So if there was a modification that would make this radio do crazy amounts of power and, do phenomenal things, don't you think Ranger, Galaxy, and all the Ranger and all the companies that use their boards, they do the modification themselves? That's why they don't do them. Shit like this is actually decreasing your performance. Now, it looks good on an analog watt meter, like that. It will look fine. You do this modification, guarantee you're going to get your needle to go up farther. The needle on the front of the radio, you'll get it to go up farther. But if you look at it on something like a spectrum analyzer, and I've done a separate video, I'm pretty sure it was, don't know if it was one of the VHPs, but it was a Ranger board, basically the same chassis. And I showed that. I desoldered one side of that to remove the modification out of circuit. You'd look at it on a spectrum analyzer, you'd see all of these harmonics pop up. Huge amounts of energy all over the RF spectrum, but you watch the power, the actual carrier power on frequency, you'd put the modification in, the power would actually drop on channel, and power would pop up everywhere else on the RF spectrum. Take the modification out, all that, well, not all of it, because it is a black box radio, but most of those harmonics would all go away, and your power on channel would actually increase. So yes, doing stuff like this actually reduces power. Don't go doing it. Other stuff I noticed on the bottom here, I don't know why. For some reason, he's jumpered over between the ground, the DC board ground, and chassis ground. Got me. Yeah, it's not supposed to be like that. So there's two ground planes to your radio. There's DC board grounds, all these big, super heavy traces. You see all over the board here, where all the cans for like the IF cans, like underneath here, the crystal filter, stuff like that's the common ground for the whole radio, the DC ground. This DC ground, your battery connection. Okay, that's the DC ground. The chassis ground is different. That's separate. That's isolated by a bunch of capacitors on the other side of the board. In some radios, not this version and this style radio, but on some radios, other manufacturers, you might find those ceramic capacitors, on the solder side. They'll be from the chassis ground side over to the DC ground. They should not be connected with a wire. So yeah, they've got a jumper wire there. There's a blob of solder there. There's one more right there. Actually, soldered a bridge on there. But for some reason, I guess, didn't feel they needed one over here, so they didn't do it on this one. And they didn't need to do it on this one because this plane just continues around to the other side. But yeah, so I've got to remove that. Another thing you might obviously see, there's been a pissed off groundhog or gopher on the underside of this thing chewing on the circuit traces, because there's traces missing here and lifted, and yeah, they're just, some of them aren't even attached anymore. So yeah, I gotta see what the hell's going on. You can see some squiggle marks here. I guess those squiggle marks were to identify what to do. I don't know. But yeah, I gotta fix that. But like I say, surprisingly, when I looked at this, I'm used to pulling these off, pulling this cover off, and what do I normally see? 3 holes over here. The limiter's been removed. The limiters are in this. AMC and ALC circuits, from at least first glance, without really looking really close on the other side to see. But yeah, I don't see any solder work on any of the limiters. So, but I got to check on this, because we are in the audio section back here. I think that was maybe just a diode. But yeah, man, get a desoldering iron, or, my God, at the very least, learn how to use desoldering braid. Don't destroying circuit boards like that. But, yeah, other than that, man, I don't really see a lot of hackery. I mean, there's hackery. The coax cable was completely screwed up. Wrong end, poorly soldered, broke a ceramic bypass cap in the amp board. And here, yeah, you got a couple jumper wires. The standard modification that everybody does, except for me. Well, I do it. I undo it. But yeah, that... But yeah, actually I was expecting to see more, and there's actually less. So yeah, got a receiver mod, yeah, that's fine. Like I say, not really going to gain anything there, but by the same token, you're not going to lose anything either. So yeah, it's not that bad. It's not a basket case. That's what I was actually expecting to see, was a basket case, and yeah, this is just remove a couple solder joints, pull those two parts out, I got to whip out the schematic, see what the hell they got going on here, fix these bodged up solder traces. But yes, I mean, it wasn't hacked too bad. So there you go. Another thing I can see wasn't bodged too bad. These coils aren't stretched to the point where they're about ready to explode under spring tension. They haven't been all twisted out. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's been peaked and tuned, but we'll de-peak it. We'll do an alignment, a proper alignment, by the book. Output power will be by the book. And you know something? So people are like, I want maximum power out of the radio. You know what maximum power, aligning your radios, somebody does an alignment to a radio, and then you get the radio back, and you just go in and crank up the power and crank up the modulation. Like I say, you're going to splatter all over the band, but in the long run, you're going to damage your radio. Radio was not designed to do that. That's why they have in the alignment for, like I say, this is not like this radio had to meet FCC specs, so they can set the power levels. The manufacturers know what the output power level safely should be set at. Follow what the alignment procedure says, and even these poorly made radios will last a long time. But that's the key. Don't try to squeeze every single watt of power out of it. For starters, this is a high power radio to start with. Those few extra watts you're going to get aren't going to make a needle's worth of let me try that again. Getting tongue twisted here. The small gains you're going to get by trying to squeeze every ounce of power out of this radio is not going to make one needle's worth of difference on the receiving radio, on their S meter. This is a high power radio to start with, so the power ratios you're dealing with there, it's not going to make a difference. Nobody will ever know. So other than if you go cranking your modulation limiter and ALC up, you'll become distorted. Actually, you'll just sound worse. You'll be putting out more power and sounding worse. But, yeah, so there you go. There's a Galaxy, forgot again what the hell, 98, I think. Yeah, 98 VHP. See, I got a couple parts to remove. Probably that, like I said, that diode that's there is supposed to be a resistor. But yeah, other than that, then a couple bodged on wires, a couple parts, put a new coax cable on it. I'll extract that broken screw out of there so it can have the proper 4 screws so we don't have the cover flapping around here and any leakage. That way the covers, that's kind of important for stuff like that. You want the covers tight down on here. There's a bad place to put an amplifier to start with, floating over top of the radio right here. But yeah, it's very important that this shield have, actually I wish they had 4 more screws in here. They should have these 4, and they should actually have a few more bosses sticking out here, and actually 4 more screws. Those covers should really be down tight for really good RF shielding protection. But yes, I'll get that extracted and fixed up there. But there you go. So that's what was done. You wanted to see what modifications were done? Yeah, some hackery, but I've seen 10 times worse, if not more. I mean, so I don't think it's really as bad as you thought it was. I'm sure, actually I can just look at it. Yeah, some of the pots are turned to full rotation. So yeah, that's probably, if someone was telling you probably that you sounded distorted, yeah, that's because everything's cranked to the max. But I'll get that all turned down. So there you go.